I'd always believed I had the perfect life. My name is Evan, and I'd been married to Clara for 5 years. We met in college, and I'll admit I fell for her hard. She had that spark, the way she'd light up a room, and I was captivated. Every day with her felt like a blessing. Sure, we had our little arguments now and then, but it was normal, right? Every couple has their issues. Evan, Clara said, looking up from her phone as we sat at breakfast one morning. She looked distracted. I didn't think much of it. I'm leaving for that conference today. I'll be gone for 3 days. I nodded, shoveling eggs into my mouth. I know. You mentioned it last night. She smiled faintly. I'll miss you. I'll miss you too, I said, the words sincere. I had no reason not to believe her. As she kissed me goodbye, I couldn't help but notice how distant she seemed. It wasn't unusual for her to be preoccupied, but that day something felt off. I shrugged it off. The first day without her was strangely quiet. I didn't realize how much I relied on her presence until the house felt empty. At work, I kept busy, buried in numbers and reports. Trying not to think about the nagging feeling that had started to creep in. I hadn't spoken to Richard much lately, my boss, but when I ran into him in the break room, he greeted me with that usual smile of his. It was warm, too warm. He clapped me on the back. Hey, how's the wife? Richard asked, leaning in a little too close. I froze. She's fine, I replied quickly, avoiding his eyes. I couldn't pinpoint why, but something about Richard always unsettled me. He was charming, manipulative, always saying the right things. There was something cold beneath the surface. Well, tell her I said hi, he said, a wink in his voice. He turned to grab his coffee, but there was an undertone to his words that made me feel strange. I shook it off. It's nothing, I thought. I'm being paranoid. The next few days were filled with work and the usual distractions. But Clara's absence lingered in the back of my mind. I called her every night. She always sounded a little too busy to talk, which was unusual. Clara had always made time for me, even during the most hectic of days, but I didn't press her. On the third night, I texted her, asking if she wanted to talk when she had a moment. The reply came after a long delay. I'm really tired. I'll be back soon. Love you. Love you. It seemed so empty in the context of her cold response, but I didn't think much of it at the time. By the time Clara returned, I was exhausted, but glad to see her. She walked in with a tired smile, suitcase in hand. Hey, she greeted me softly. I smiled, happy to see her. Hey, how was the conference? Busy, she replied, not meeting my eyes. But it was good. There was something off about her. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. She kissed me lightly on the cheek, but I noticed she pulled away quicker than usual. Are you okay? I asked, searching her face for any sign of something being wrong. I'm fine, just tired, she replied, brushing it off. It's been a long few days. I nodded, trying not to let my doubts take hold. After all, she was home now. Later that night, I sat on the couch while Clara unpacked her suitcase in the bedroom. She had her phone in her hand, her face illuminated by the screen as she texted quickly. I noticed her fingers were moving faster than usual, her focus entirely on the phone. I couldn't help myself. Who are you texting? I asked. She looked up, startled, then gave me a tight smile. Just some colleagues from the conference. Nothing important. Right? I said. Though I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right, I didn't want to confront her about it. It felt too invasive. But as I lay in bed that night, her phone buzzing on the nightstand, I couldn't help but wonder if I was missing something. Maybe I was paranoid. After all, she had just returned from a work trip, but something told me that wasn't the case. The first call came 2 days after Clara left for her conference. I picked up the phone, but there was only silence on the other end. My heart skipped a beat, but I shrugged it off. It could have been a wrong number. A few hours later, the same thing happened. I answered the call. A click, then silence. No one spoke. I tried calling back, but the number was blocked. I felt uneasy, but I forced myself to dismiss it. Maybe it's just a prank, I told myself. Clara's been gone a while, and my mind was starting to play tricks on me that night. I met up with a couple of friends for drinks. The conversation was light, nothing heavy, till Mike casually dropped something that made my blood run cold. "You know," he said, sipping his beer, "I saw Clara a few days ago. She was at that new cafe downtown with someone." I froze, my hand pausing midair halfway to my glass. "With someone?" "Yeah, some guy I didn't recognize. They were ... close. Laughing, talking." "I just thought you should know," Mike added, not looking at me. My throat tightened. "It's probably nothing," I muttered, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. "Yeah, but just so you know," Mike said, "it wasn't just a casual meetup. You might want to check in with her." I forced a smile, but inside, everything was unraveling. I hated how his words echoed in my head long after I left the bar. "It's nothing. She's just busy with work. She's probably just making new friends." But the doubt gnawed at me. Why didn't she tell me about it? Clara always told me everything. The next day, I went into work, trying to push the worry aside. I buried myself in reports and meetings, but every time I looked up, my thoughts wandered. Was it true? Was she with someone else? It didn't help that Richard seemed extra friendly. Too friendly? I ran into him in the hallway, and he greeted me with that knowing smile, like he was in on some secret I didn't understand. "Evan," Richard said, his voice almost too warm. "I didn't realize how much I'd miss having you around while you were away last week. How's Clara?" I stopped, dead in my tracks. The way he said her name, it felt off. "She's fine," I said, forcing the words out. "Just busy." "Yeah, I heard," Richard said, his eyes flicking to the side. "Busy with her things?" His tone lingered, almost like a challenge. I tried to smile, but it didn't reach my eyes. What did he mean by that? "Well, I better get back to my desk," I said, walking away faster than usual. Richard's words kept swirling in my head. Other things? My skin crawled. There was something about the way he said it too familiar. Too intimate. By the time lunch rolled around, I was barely functioning. The weight of it all felt unbearable. It had only been a few days, but the seed of doubt had been planted. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I was heading out the door at the end of the day when Richard offered me a ride home. "Need a lift?" he asked casually, like it was nothing. I hesitated. I usually drove myself, but it was too late, and I didn't want to say no. "Sure," I replied, forcing the words out through clenched teeth as we drove through the city. The silence between us was thick with unspoken tension. Richard's car smelled like expensive cologne, and I kept my eyes fixed on the road. Avoiding any unnecessary conversation, we pulled into my street. And before I could get out of the car, I noticed something in the back seat. It was a scarf. Clara's scarf. The one she had worn when she left. I recognized the pattern immediately. It had fallen behind the seat, and it looked like it had been there for days. My heart dropped. I didn't want to ask, but I couldn't stop myself. "Richard, whose scarf is this?" He glanced at it for a moment, then back at me. "Oh, that," he said, his smile faltering for a second. "Clara must have left it in the car. She was in here with me one evening just before she left. Must have forgotten it." I felt sick. "She didn't mention it," I muttered, my hand shaking as I gripped the door handle. Richard's eyes met mine. And for a split second, there was something almost smug in his gaze. He didn't say anything more. I didn't stay long. I mumbled a quick thanks, slammed the door, and walked away. My heart was pounding. What the hell is going on? The door clicked open, and Clara stepped inside, her suitcase in tow. I stood up from the couch, a smile creeping onto my face. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed her until I saw her again. "Hey, welcome back," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, despite the knot in my stomach. I could feel something was off. She barely looked at me. "Hi," she said flatly, dropping her bag at the door. I frowned, unsure if I was imagining it, but I could feel a wall between us already. Clara had always been affectionate, always gave me that spark when she returned from trips. But this time was different. I stepped closer, reaching for her. "I missed you," I said, my voice soft. She pulled away slightly. I know, but I'm tired. It's been a long few days, she replied, her words distant. I didn't want to push, but her response stung more than I expected. You look like you've had a lot on your mind, I said, trying to lighten the mood. Want to talk about it? No, she snapped, before taking a deep breath. I just need some space, okay? I don't want to talk about the conference or anything else right now. I recoiled a little, hurt by her sharpness. What's going on? I forced a smile. All right, I'll let you get settled in. I walked toward the kitchen, trying to calm myself. But the doubts had started creeping in like a slow poison. The next few days were no better. Clara seemed to go through the motions of being home. But it was like she wasn't really here. Her mind, her heart, were somewhere else. I tried to give her space, tried to let things flow back to normal, but it wasn't happening. We barely spoke. When we did, it was about the most mundane things. I asked about her trip, but she kept her answers short. No excitement. No joy in seeing me again. I didn't know what to make of it then. On the third night after her return, Clara came to me with a look on her face that made my heart stop. She sat on the edge of the bed, wringing her hands together, and for a moment, I thought she might cry. Evan, she started, her voice shaky. I sat beside her, my chest tightening. What's wrong? She hesitated, her eyes darting around before she finally met my gaze. I have something to tell you. I froze. What is it? I'm pregnant, she said quietly, almost like she was waiting for me to react. I blinked, my mind racing. What? You're pregnant? She nodded, her eyes not quite meeting mine. Yes, I found out while I was at the conference. The words hit me like a freight train. I felt a surge of joy. I'm going to be a father. But then I saw the coldness in her eyes, the way she avoided my touch when I reached for her. That joy turned to confusion, to doubt. I don't know what to say, I managed to say, trying to process everything at once. Clara just looked down, her hands gripping the sheets tightly. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want it to change anything. Change what? I asked, my voice rising a little. This is big, Clara. You're carrying our child. You're not saying anything like it's a good thing. What's going on? She sighed, her shoulders slumping. I don't want this to be some huge thing. Can't we just deal with it calmly? I don't want any drama. Drama? I repeated, the word bitter on my tongue. This is our child, Clara. I'm supposed to be happy, not questioning everything. I didn't ask for this either, she snapped, her voice sharp. I didn't plan for any of this. It's just happening, okay? I stared at her, the room suddenly feeling smaller. What did she mean by that? You didn't plan for this? I asked, my voice low, almost hurt. I thought we were a team, Clara. You're telling me you didn't plan for this? You didn't plan to have a baby with me? She stood up quickly, rubbing her temples. I'm tired, Evan. I don't know what I want right now. I don't know what's going to happen. I watched her walk to the window, her back turned to me. My heart ached, but my mind was a mess. How did we get here? Clara, I said, standing up and walking toward her. Please, just talk to me. You're shutting me out, and it's hurting. I don't know what's going on with you, but this isn't the woman I married. She turned around, her face a mixture of guilt and frustration. Maybe I'm not that woman anymore. Maybe I don't know who I am. Her words hit harder than anything she'd said so far. I tried to hold it together, but all I felt was a sharp, searing pain in my chest. I don't know what to do with that, I whispered. She didn't answer. She just stood there, the silence stretching between us. The life we once shared felt like it was slipping away, piece by piece. I can't remember what started the argument that night. Maybe it was the way Clara kept avoiding my questions, or the coldness that had hung between us for weeks. We were sitting in the living room, the tension in the air so thick. I felt like I was suffocating. Why won't you just talk to me, Clara? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I can't keep guessing. What happened to us? She crossed her arms, her gaze distant. Nothing happened. Everything's fine, I scoffed. Fine? Really? Because it doesn't feel fine. You're distant, you're cold, and you're lying to me. I can feel it, Clara. She flinched, but didn't respond. My frustration boiled over and I stood up, pacing in front of her. Are you seeing someone else? I asked the question, feeling like a gut punch as I said it out loud. I wasn't ready for her to answer, but I couldn't hold it in anymore. Clara's eyes narrowed. What do you want from me, Evan? You're being ridiculous. I ran a hand through my hair, my mind spinning. I just want the truth. Is that so hard? Because I don't think this baby is mine. Clara, the way you've been acting, something's off. She stood up slowly, her eyes glinting with something I couldn't quite place. For a moment, the world seemed to pause. And then, with a breath that seemed to take everything out of her, Clara finally spoke. The baby isn't yours, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I froze. My blood ran cold, and my stomach dropped. It felt like the room was spinning, my chest tightening. I didn't know what to say. My mind raced, but I couldn't process the words she'd just spoken. What? The word barely escaped my lips. What did you just say? Clara's eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and something darker. She took a deep breath and stepped toward me. It's Richard's, she said, her voice steady now. The baby is Richard's. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My world crashed down in an instant. All the anger, all the confusion, everything I had been feeling, all of it came crashing down on me. Richard, my boss, my so-called friend, the man I had trusted. He had been with my wife. I couldn't form a coherent thought. I was drowning in disbelief and rage, in a pain I didn't know how to explain. How could you? Why would you? She lowered her gaze, unable to meet my eyes. I didn't mean for it to happen. I never planned it, Evan. But Richard makes me feel alive. He makes me feel desired. With you, it's just predictable, boring. I needed more than that. Her words cut deeper than I could have imagined. Boring? You think our life together was boring? She flinched, but nodded. Yes, I didn't feel anything with you anymore. Richard made me feel something again, something I didn't know I needed. My body shook with anger and heartbreak, but I couldn't find the words to respond. How do you fight something like this? How do you fight when the person you love has ripped your world apart with one confession? You think this is my fault? I finally managed, my voice shaky, but full of hurt. You think it's because I'm boring? You think that gives you the right to destroy everything we had? Clara's face twisted in pain, but she didn't apologize. Instead, she stepped back, arms hugging herself tighter. I'm sorry, Evan. I never wanted to hurt you. But it's done now. The baby is Richard's. I can't change it. I stood there, paralyzed. I couldn't breathe. The anger, the pain, the betrayal was all too much. I wanted to scream. I wanted to punch something. But most of all, I wanted to get out. I needed to escape this suffocating hell she had put me in. Without another word, I turned and walked toward the door. Evan. Clara's voice broke through my haze. I paused, my hand on the doorknob, but I didn't turn around. I couldn't look at her anymore. I don't know what to do, I said, my voice raw. I can't do this. And with that, I left. I didn't know where I was going, but I couldn't stay there, not with her. Not in that house that used to feel like home. I stepped out into the night, my heart heavy with betrayal, my mind a blur of rage and confusion. Everything I thought I knew was gone. I didn't know where to go after I left the house. My mind was in a haze, a mix of disbelief and rage that blurred everything around me. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I ignored it. It was Clara, no doubt, trying to explain herself again. I didn't want to hear it. Not then. I drove aimlessly, not caring where I was headed. The weight in my chest was suffocating, and I needed someone to talk to, someone who could help me make sense of everything. My thoughts were spinning. I should have known. How could I not see this coming? My mind kept returning to Richard's smug smile, the way he'd always been a little too familiar with Clara. Finally, I pulled up to Daniel's place. I hadn't seen him in a while, but we'd been friends since high school. and I knew I could count on him. I knocked on the door, and he opened it almost immediately. His face softened when he saw me, but I could see the concern in his eyes. "Evan," he said quietly, stepping aside so I could walk in. "You okay?" I shook my head, feeling my throat tighten. "Not okay, man. She betrayed me." He nodded, not needing any further explanation. We both knew what had happened. "I'm sorry, bro," Daniel said, his voice low. "I can't even imagine what you're feeling right now." I sank into the couch, burying my face in my hands. The tears came tears. I didn't want to cry, but couldn't stop. She slept with him, Daniel. My own boss. The guy I trusted. The guy I thought had my back. He sat beside me, his hand on my shoulder, his voice full of anger. "Man, that's fucked up. You don't deserve that." "I swear, if I were you, I don't know what to do," I muttered, cutting him off. "I feel like I'm losing everything. Like I'm the one who's messed up." I paused, looking up at him. How could I not see it? How could I not see what she was doing? Daniel's eyes softened. "Don't blame yourself. She's the one who did this, not you." I took a shaky breath. But I should have known. I should have seen it. I was too blind, too trusting. "God, I even don't," Daniel interrupted. "Don't blame yourself for her shit. She made her choices. And so did Richard. He was right. I knew it, but it didn't stop the flood of guilt that weighed me down. I wanted to scream, to hit something. My hands were shaking. I felt like I might lose control. "I don't know if I can ever forgive her," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I can't even look at her the same way anymore." "I wouldn't blame you if you didn't," Daniel said. "She doesn't deserve forgiveness. She deserves to feel the consequences of what she's done." I nodded, the anger inside me growing. But there was a part of me that was still clinging to the idea of fixing things. Maybe it was because I didn't want to believe everything we'd built together could be gone in an instant. But then I remembered Richard. His smug face, that look of superiority he always wore when he talked to me. I could still see it clearly, and it made my blood boil. The next day at work, I saw Richard across the room, his usual smirk plastered on his face as he talked to some of the other employees. The smugness in his demeanor made my fists clench. He had no idea how badly I wanted to rip him apart, but I knew better than to act on impulse. Instead, I just watched him, my chest tight with frustration. Everyone's going to know. They're going to see me as the fool, the guy who got played by his own wife and his best friend. The thought of quitting crossed my mind, but I quickly dismissed it. I couldn't give Richard that satisfaction. He'd think he'd won, and that was something I couldn't let happen. Not like this. I wasn't going to fight him with anger or violence. That would only make me look weak. No, I was going to fight back with patience. I was going to let the truth come out, piece by piece, and let him destroy himself. I'd watch him crash and burn, and when he did, when everything fell apart for him, the way it had for me, that's when I'd finally get my justice. The pain of Clara's betrayal still burned in my chest. But something inside me had changed. The shock had worn off, replaced with something colder, something sharper. I wasn't going to let this go. Not this time. I started small screenshots of texts and messages. I knew Clara had been messaging Richard while she was at the conference. I'd seen her sneaking glances at her phone, her eyes lighting up whenever he texted. At first I told myself I was imagining things, but now I knew I had to get proof. I spent hours combing through her phone when she wasn't around, taking screenshots of every text, every call log. It wasn't just their flirtation. It was the way they spoke to each other, like they had no respect for me, like I was invisible. The more I dug, the more I uncovered. Their messages were full of intimate details, things they'd done together while I was at work or away. The way Richard spoke to her, so possessive, so confident. I felt sick every time I read them, but I couldn't stop. I needed the proof. Then, it didn't stop there. At work, I started noticing the little things. Financial irregularities, odd transactions that didn't add up. Richard had always been good with numbers, but this was different. There were large sums of money being moved around, money that couldn't be accounted for. I dug deeper. Running the reports and checking the transactions against our budget, the truth was clear. Richard had been misusing company funds. And Clara? She had been covering for him. She was involved. They were in this together. I wasn't sure what hurt more, the affair or the realization that my wife, the person I had trusted with everything, had helped Richard steal from the company. But one thing was certain. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. It was time to play my part. The broken husband, at work, I kept my head down. I smiled when I saw Richard, acting as if nothing had changed. It was hard, but I knew what I was doing. He had no idea that I knew what he had done, that I was building my case. He had no clue that his arrogance was fueling my resolve. One day I ran into him in the break room. I could see the smug look in his eyes as he watched me approach. It was like he knew something I didn't, like he was untouchable. "Hey, Evan," Richard greeted me with a grin. "How's the home life? Still holding it together?" I could feel my blood boil at the casualness in his tone, but I kept my expression neutral. "Yeah, still figuring things out," I replied, my voice even. "But you know, life goes on." He raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. "I'm sure it's tough. Clara told me you've been struggling a bit. Maybe you should take some time off? You know, get your head straight." I forced a chuckle. He's playing his game. But I'm not falling for it. "No, I'm good," I said, keeping the smile on my face. "Just dealing with stuff, you know? Work keeps me busy." Richard nodded, his eyes gleaming with that same arrogant satisfaction. "Well, if you need anything, you know where to find me," he said, with a hint of something sinister behind his words. "Yeah," I replied, my voice cold. "I'll keep that in mind." As I walked away, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. He had no idea. No idea that I was playing him, that I was building the case that would bring him down. The next day, I confronted Clara. I couldn't just sit there anymore pretending like everything was fine. I needed answers. I needed her to know that I wasn't stupid. "Clara," I said, my voice low as I approached her in the kitchen, "we need to talk." She turned, her face already tight with anxiety. "About what?" I took a deep breath. "About you and Richard?" "About everything." Her eyes flickered with panic, but she quickly masked it. "What do you mean?" "There's nothing to talk about." I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots, the texts, the proof. "This," I said, my voice calm, but my words sharp. "This is what I mean. Do you want to explain this?" Her face went pale, but she didn't say anything at first. Then she sighed. "Evan, I'm sorry. I never meant for it to happen. But it's over now." "Is it?" I asked, my voice colder now, "because it doesn't feel over." "You're still lying to me? You're still protecting him." "I never meant to hurt you," she whispered, her voice cracking. I don't know what happened." "Don't." I cut her off, my anger flaring. "Don't pretend this was some accident. You knew exactly what you were doing." I stood there watching her for a moment. The pain was still there, but it was buried under the cold, hard shell I was building. "You and Richard, your little affair, your lies, the stolen money you're going to pay for this? Both of you." Clara's eyes filled with tears, but I didn't care anymore. "I'm done," I said. "I'm done with you. And I'm done with him." As I turned and walked out, I could feel the weight of the future pressing down on me. I wasn't broken anymore. I wasn't the man who'd been betrayed. I was the man who would make them pay, and they would pay. I'd been watching for days, making sure everything was in place before I made my move. Clara and Richard had no idea what was coming. They still thought they were in control, that they could keep lying and pretending nothing had changed. But I was done being the fool. I spent hours preparing, gathering every shred of evidence I had collected, screenshots of texts, proof of stolen funds, the financial discrepancies. I knew I couldn't just confront them again. I needed something bigger, something that would hit them where it hurt most, their careers. I pulled up the HR email, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. The message I typed was simple. No personal accusations, just facts. There are irregularities in the company's financial records, possibly involving Richard Thompson. In his close relationship with Clara Bennett, I attached the proof. The damning evidence. I hesitated, but only for a moment. Then, with one last glance at the screen, I hit send. The next morning, I could feel the shift in the air as soon as I stepped into the office. I could see the subtle tension between people as whispers started to circulate. Richard wasn't in yet, but Clara was, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were heavy, her face drawn. I didn't care. She deserved every second of this. By lunchtime, the rumors were everywhere. Did you hear about Clara? She used company trips for other things, no way. She was having an affair with Richard. I heard they were stealing from the company. The whispers grew louder. I could see Clara's face redden with every passing second, but I stayed quiet, letting the storm gather around her. I watched as she tried to salvage her image, smoothing over the cracks with a forced smile, but it was too late. Her reputation was crumbling, and she knew it. Richard's arrogance, once so evident, had evaporated. He walked through the office later that afternoon, and I could practically feel the weight of the guilt and fear he was trying to hide. His usual smirk was gone, replaced by a clenched jaw and cold eyes. I didn't move a muscle, just watched as his empire began to crumble, piece by piece. By mid-afternoon, an all-company email came through. HR was investigating, and Richard and Clara were both under scrutiny. My heart didn't race. I wasn't excited. I was just ... satisfied. This was the beginning of their downfall. I wasn't going to make it easy for them. They'd have to fight to save their careers. Just like they'd made me fight for everything I thought we had. Later that day, I ran into Richard in the hallway. He didn't see me at first, but I watched him turn the corner, his eyes darting nervously from one person to the next. For a moment, I thought about confronting him, maybe yelling at him, making him feel the weight of everything he had done. But then I remembered the plan. He didn't need to hear my anger. He needed to watch his world collapse in silence. I kept walking, my steps measured. I didn't need to say anything. I didn't need to waste my breath. He already knew the truth, and that was enough. Later, as I sat at my desk watching the chaos unfold around me, I felt a strange sense of emptiness. It was working. They were losing everything. But for some reason, my chest still ached. Clara's face kept haunting me, even though I knew she didn't deserve my sympathy. She had made her choices, and now she was paying the price. I knew she'd regret it one day, but that didn't matter to me anymore. She made her bed. Now she lies in it. But the deeper truth was this. I had been the one who lost. I had loved her. I had trusted her, and that was something I would never get back. I could destroy their careers, but I couldn't erase the part of me that still cared for her. That pain still lingered. As the office began to quiet down for the day, I stood up and grabbed my coat. I was about to leave when I saw Clara standing at the far end of the hallway, talking to HR. Her shoulders were slumped, her eyes red from crying. For a second, I almost walked over. I almost went to her, but I stopped myself. She didn't deserve my sympathy. She didn't deserve my forgiveness, so I turned and walked out the door, letting their world crumble behind me. This was just the beginning. It was a week later when the fallout finally hit its peak. Richard was fired. The investigation into the financial misdeeds, the affair, everything. The HR meeting, the emails, the whispers, I had watched it all unfold from a distance, my heart strangely numb. But when the email came through, announcing his termination, something inside me shifted. I had one. It felt empty, like a hollow victory. But it was a victory nonetheless. The next morning I walked into work and saw Clara standing near the coffee machine. Her eyes were swollen, red from crying. She looked lost, like a child who had been abandoned in the middle of a storm. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her, but I quickly reminded myself that this was what she had chosen. She had made her bed. Now she had to lie in it. She saw me, her face lighting up with a glimmer of hope. "Evan," she called out, taking a step toward me. I didn't respond. I kept walking, heading straight for my desk. She followed, hesitant but determined, her footsteps echoing in the quiet office. "Evan, please," she said, her voice shaky. "We need to talk." I I know what I've done, and I'm so sorry. You have to believe me. It was a mistake. Richard, it was all a mistake. I stopped at my desk, my hand resting on the edge as I turned to face her. I didn't feel angry anymore, just cold. A mistake? I repeated, my voice calm but unwavering. You're telling me that sleeping with my boss, lying to me, stealing from the company was a mistake? Her eyes filled with tears, and she reached for my hand. Evan, I was confused. I didn't know what I was doing. I thought I was unhappy. I thought I needed something else. But I'm sorry. I made a huge mistake. Please, can we start over? I can't lose you. I can't lose everything. I pulled my hand away, watching her, studying her. Her desperation was clear. But the truth was, I wasn't desperate anymore. I wasn't clinging to the woman who had destroyed me. I had rebuilt myself, and I wasn't going to let her tear that down. No, Clara, I said, my tone still calm. You made your choice. You've made several choices, and they were all lies. Every single one of them. I gave you everything I had. My trust, my love. And you threw it all away for what? For Richard? For a cheap thrill? She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. No, Evan, please. I never meant for it to get this far. I swear to you. It was just one mistake after another. But I love you. I always have. I'll make it right. I swear I will. I took a deep breath, swallowing the bitterness in my throat. I could see the hurt in her eyes, the regret. But that wasn't enough. It would never be enough. You don't get to come back into my life, Clara, I said, each word cutting through the air. Not after everything you've done. Not after you used me, lied to me, and dragged me into this mess. I'm not your backup plan. You don't get to destroy everything we had and then come crawling back when it all falls apart. That's not how this works. She looked at me, her face crumpling in grief. But I need you. I can't do this without you, Evan. Please, I'll change. I'll make it right. I'll fix everything. I shook my head slowly. No, you're already gone. You lost me the moment you chose Richard over me. You lost me the moment you decided I wasn't enough. You can't fix this. There's nothing left to fix. Her sobs grew louder, and I could see the weight of what was happening finally hitting her. The realization that she had destroyed everything: her career, her marriage, her dignity. She looked like a shell of the woman I had once loved. But there was no sympathy left in me. Goodbye, Clara, I said, my voice final. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She just stood there, looking at me with tear-filled eyes. And then, without another word, she turned and walked away. Her steps echoed down the hallway, each one a reminder of how far we had fallen. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I was done. I sat down at my desk, my mind strangely calm. The anger, the pain, it was all gone. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. The chains had been broken. Clara had destroyed herself, and now it was over. Richard was gone, and Clara had lost everything. But the thing that mattered most was that I was still standing. I still had my dignity. I still had my strength. And as I watched Clara disappear from my life for good, I knew one thing. I had taken back control. I had taken back my life. It's been months now. Time has passed, but the memories of what happened are still there, buried in the back of my mind. I don't think they'll ever truly go away, but I've learned to live with them, to let them be a part of me, rather than something that controls me. I don't wake up in the mornings with that pit in my stomach anymore. I don't spend my days replaying every moment of the betrayal, every lie she told me. I don't look at my phone and wonder if Richard is still trying to twist the truth. The anger, the pain, they're still there, sometimes lurking in the shadows. But I've learned to push them aside, to focus on the things that matter now. I started going to therapy, something I never thought I'd need. At first, I resisted it. I didn't want to talk about Clara, about Richard, about everything that had happened, but it helped. I started to understand the damage that betrayal had caused, how it had shattered my trust, how it had made me question my worth. But therapy also helped me rebuild. It gave me the tools to heal, to grow stronger in the places where I'd been broken. And then there were my friends. Daniel especially. He was there for me when I needed him most, offering support, listening to my rants, telling me what I needed to hear, even when it wasn't what I wanted to hear. He reminded me that I wasn't alone, that I wasn't defined by Clara's betrayal. I had worth, I had strength, and I had a future one that didn't involve her. At work, things were different too. Richard's downfall had left a power vacuum, and I'd found myself in a position to take advantage of it. I started stepping up, taking on more responsibility, showing my bosses what I was capable of. It wasn't easy. It wasn't immediate, but eventually, the promotion came. It wasn't just a reward for hard work. It was a sign that I'd overcome everything, that I was stronger than I'd been before. When I stood in the office that day, holding the promotion letter in my hand, a part of me wanted to shout. A part of me wanted to stand in front of Clara's empty desk and scream, "Look at me. Look at what you threw away." But I didn't. I didn't need to. I had already won. I could still feel the scar on my heart, the place where Clara used to be. But it was no longer raw. It was a reminder not of my failure, but of my strength. She had tried to tear me down, to break me, but I was still here, standing tall. And for the first time in months, I realized something. I didn't need her to be whole. I was whole on my own, and the thing is, I didn't just survive this. I thrived. I remember the first time I looked in the mirror after everything. The man I saw wasn't the same man who had been blindsided by betrayal. He was someone stronger, someone who had learned to trust himself again, someone who had found a new sense of purpose. I still think about Clara sometimes, but not with anger or bitterness anymore. I think about what she took from me, my trust, my peace of mind, my belief in love. But I also think about what I took from the experience, the strength to rebuild, the courage to move forward, and the clarity to see that the best version of me was waiting on the other side of all that pain. Betrayal destroyed me, but it also freed me. I had been trapped in a lie, in a life that wasn't mine. And when everything fell apart, I finally found the truth. The truth is, I lost a wife. But I found myself, and that, in the end, was the greatest victory of all.